The Blues versus the Stormers. It finished 24-29, but definitely the way the game went was not as we expected. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind Driving Maul, your best place for predictions and opinion, and thank you for joining me for this post-match reaction. Early on, there were both sides in that first quarter of an hour or so. Both went close. Both had opportunities to score tries, but neither of them really could finish them off. Too many knock-ons, too many drop balls, and that kind of went through the entire game. Some really interesting play by the Stormers early on. We saw them. We came into this thinking that look, after that Hurricanes game, we thought that basically they were a line-out maul team, but instead they had a very set play way of playing, which was they'd get the ball out wide to a forward who would crash it down. The next phase would go to a pod. The pod would take it in, and then it would go all the way across the other side for another forward to take it up out on the wing, and then repeat, basically out to a pod for a close-up, allowing the back line to reform, spread all the way out to the other side. And we saw that in that first 20 minutes. We didn't see it repeated in the second half, which was interesting because they were definitely making grounds when they put forwards against wingers out wide. And they were getting to run over one player and getting over that game line and making advantage of it. But they weren't. The Blues' defence bent, but it didn't break. It actually looked like the Stormers were really going to score tries from that. The Stormers did have a couple of 5-metre line-outs, but they didn't result in mauls. They came down and they tried other things, a player wrapping around or playing it out into the midfield. Really not what we were expecting from this Stormers side. So hats tip for them to changing their game style, but not necessarily playing to their strengths or their perceived strengths at the very least. They did get into the lead with a penalty on 18 minutes, and then they managed to get another one just before the half-hour mark to take it up 6-0. And you were starting to worry about the Blues at this point because the Stormers had most of the play. And that went through the whole game. I mean, we're at the end here, we're talking about 67% territory, 64% territory to the Stormers. And that was across both halves. It wasn't like one half went one way and then the other half was even. Both halves, the Stormers dominated territory and possession. But they just couldn't break down that good New Zealand or good Blues defence. Not something we've seen before. The Blues haven't had this composure before. They managed, 85% tackles, whereas the Stormers came to make half the number of tackles, only achieved 75% of them. Sure, the Blues gave up a few more penalties at 11-7 by the Stormers, but the Stormers, as they weren't doing that line-out maul, they really couldn't take advantage of that and put it into points. It took it was a really nice set move to score the opening try. All the midfield players were involved, either on dummy runs or in other moves. Rico, wrapping round, takes the ball and manages to get into an outside line, gives the ball off to Talia. Talia, who picked that up on the halfway line, still had to fend off two other players before he went in and scored. So very good score and very much a team try. Even though a lot of the players will be looking at Rico, looking at Talia, all the other players in that back division were either running dummy runs or carried the ball for a short amount of time just to enable to make that space. And it looked like the Blues were really starting to break free at that point. Rico got another break and knocked the ball on as he bounced just short of the line. Only carrying the ball in one hand. I'd love to have seen him holding that in two hands, and then maybe he might have bounced over with the ball, but it wasn't to be. The Blues it was opening up at that point. The Blues had made something like nearly half as many runs, or just slightly over half, more than half as many runs as the Stormers at half time, but had run like 100 extra metres than them. They really were being more incisive with their runs, but they weren't finishing them off, and so they did the right choice in taking 3 points before half time. Just like the first half, where the Stormers came out and really dominated that first half, the Stormers came out in that second half and dominated the start of that as well. After 5 minutes, they decided, look, we're not breaking this defence and try to take 3 points. But a rare miss Oh, sorry, no, they did take 3 points at that point. Sorry, the miss was later on. And to close it down to a 1 point game at 10-9. The Blues then miss a clear out. The turnover ball goes wide. Dylan Lades, who had a decent game tonight, really played pretty well, played very well. Chipped the ball forwards and they went through and scored. Except it got pulled back for a forward pass. Before that would have made it really interesting, because that would have made it 10-14 or 10-16 at that point, and would have put the Blues under pressure. It very quickly broke up in that second half, became an open flowing game after about 47 minutes. It took about 20 odd minutes, half an hour for that to happen. Sorry, about half an hour for that to happen in the first half. Clearly, the players, this took a toll on them. And we had the Stormers even taking quick lineouts in that first half, really putting pressure on, really running the ball. I'm not sure that played into their hands in the end, but I say both teams really were sucking in the big ones. This was a tiring game. Terry Black, on the whole, had a quiet but effective game. He did double up on errors in the second half, unfortunately, but luckily for him, the Blues defence bent but didn't break, which is what it managed to do all the way through. Handling really was a killer for both of these sides. 8 scrums by the Blues, 5 for the Stormers, 16 turnovers by the Blues, 18 by the Stormers. Yeah, handling was not great this evening. Most of those some of those turnovers were in the ruck, but it wasn't really the rucks that were really causing the problems. It was handling errors more from both times. We got to scrum time again. When the Blues were in the Stormers 22, Akiri peels off the back, gives it to Ruru, gives it to Sammy Williams, who makes some good ground, offloads to a Terry Black, who's following up nicely, and he goes under the sticks, making it 17-9 on just after the hour mark. And at that point, you thought basically the game was pretty much over. The Stormers had lots of possession, lots of territory, but they weren't threatening that try line overly much. And the Blues defence was holding them out. This is a much more composed, much more mature kind of Blues team than we've seen in the past. The other Blues teams were making lots more mistakes. We've been missing those tackles. We've been missing those giving up penalties in silly places. There was the odd one or two, don't get me wrong. If you're under pressure for that much, you're going to give away a few penalties in bad positions. But on the whole, they did. They held out really well. Then came what could have been a turning point in this game. The ball goes up, and it was a rare contestable kick. Too many of these kicks in this game by both teams were way too long. There were very few contestable kicks in this game. Up goes Dylan Lades for it. Talia comes in, realises he's not going to get up there, gets himself entirely at a horrible position, and then lifts his arms up, and he's on the ground. Dylan Lades hits. He takes takes Dylan Lades' thighs. Dylan Lades lands on his upper back, but only because he's balanced himself with his hands. He could have come down easily on his head, and it definitely was a red card. Was there intent in there? No, I don't think so. He's got himself in all sorts of wrong positions and just the millisecond judgments, making the wrong decisions. But that's how the laws are, and the laws are there to make sure you don't put yourself in those positions because you've been trained how to handle those situations. He just got it wrong on the night, and that's what happens. That led the Stormers to have a 10-man lead. A 10-minute one-man lead at the end of the game. 10-man lead. Wow, how could they have lost? Anyway, then we had a situation that I really dislike. If we're going to have captains, and we're going to say captains are important, they have to make the decisions. Having people running on with tees and telling people and changing decisions that are being made on the pitch, I'm not a great fan of. So they had a choice of 2 penalties to take: one in front of the sticks, one out wide. Khaleesi took the one out wide to kick to the corner. Someone runs on with the tee, says no, take the 3, take the penalty in front of the sticks. So they changed their decision, and the referee allows them to do that. Then the kick was missed. Now it's not about the kick being made or missed. It's about who is controlling that game, who's making the decisions. Are we trying to have players who think for themselves, or are we trying to go down much more the NFL route where it's plays called from the sideline that the players then execute? Personally, I prefer the former rather than the latter. Towards the end there, we had a rare line-out maul by the Blues that was pushing towards the try line. It got stopped. Akiri Peel, the ball came out. Akiri got the ball, attracted the last defender, gave it to Rieko Ioane, and suddenly it's Rieko against the scrum half who's having to fly out and try and cover him. There's only one winner from there, and Rieko Ioane went over quite comfortably. That made it 24-9 with only 6 minutes to go, and clearly game over. That also was the third try, and as the Stormers didn't get any, that was a bonus point win for the Blues. That's 3 wins on the trot for the Blues, something they have not done in a very long time. As I say, this team is heading in the right direction. We've seen that earlier. Talking to fans who are friends who have watched the Blues for many years more than I have, they're much happier with. Even though they've been not necessarily winning lots of games, they've been much happier with the attitude and the way the players are playing this year. And that positivity that's come out of the Auckland team winning the Mitre 10 Cup has really transferred and carried over, at least in the fan community, if not in the players as well. So that's been all very good. Key players, clearly, we're going to be talking about the regulars because Rieko Ioane, I say, got that try for the Blues. Akiri Ioane was putting himself around as well. 12 carries meant he had more carries than anybody else in the game. Rieko was for the Blues anyway. Rieko second with 10. Talia, I say, apart from that red card, had a good game. Nanai put himself about a bit as well. The way he's been combining with Rieko Ioane has been really good. Sometimes you think he's looking around, and if it's not some Rieko that's there, he tends to go, I'll hold on to it instead. So a bit of that though, but even so, when he does combine with Rieko, it has been looking really good. Nonu got through a couple of good runs, and TJ Fiani, they've had that whole back line played pretty well tonight. Obviously, that needs the front pack to head up as well. Patrick played well, as did his locking partner Cowley Tuitoti. Sorry about the pronunciation; that's absolutely awful. And also, we've been talking about Thompson for a few weeks now. Robinson for a few weeks now in there, who got through a massive amount of work defensively. 19 tackles, he topped the group. Tuipulotu 18, some really big ones, and Gibson also with 15 as well. So that locking back 5 of the Blues pack all got through over 10 tackles each, which was a lot of work. On the Stormers side of things, a lot less tackles having to be made, but Khaleesi was one of their big players. Netzebeth as well. The big names stood out in this game. I've talked about Dylan Lades already. I thought he had a really good game. Williams also 20 runs, which meant he had more runs than anyone else in the game. Only 92 metres though, not over 100, which is what you'd expect from that kind of runs. But he put himself about, really injected himself into the line a lot, and was a big player as well. So the Stormers now go on to their Australia part of their tour with 2 games in Australia. The Blues, 3 wins on the trot. A lot of positivity around the Blues now. Can they make it to the finals? Wow, what a thought! Whilst there was talk about, hey, it's our year this year. The problem is I've heard that for the past 4 or 5 years. So actually seeing it in action has been really pleasant. It's really nice to see. The fans have been starved of any kind of success for a long time. As I say, Stormers off to Australia for their part of the tour. For those of you watching the recording, don't forget to subscribe up there. For those of you who are watching it live, don't forget to subscribe down below. Thanks for joining me live. That's the link to my Patreon. That gives you exclusive access to my opinion pieces that come out each week via Patreon, talking about things like the Sunwolves being kicked out of Super Rugby, and Super Rugby going down to 14 teams next week. I'll be talking about the new rules, proposed law changes that they're looking at trialling. And over there are 2 videos that the artificial intelligence here at YouTube think you'll enjoy. So give them a try as well. Thank you very much. And let's get on to the Australian derby that's kicking off right now.